Hi everybody and welcome to this fourth episode of Budo no Kuni, the land of martial arts. This video is brought to you by martial arts video production company BAB Japan, its magazine Hiden, and its website budojapan.com. Hiden specializes in what is called koryu. These are the martial arts which were created before the major restoration of 1868, so in a sense these arts are the predecessors of today's judo or kendo or aikido. Budo Japan is a website with English language content from Hiden as well as from BAB's extensive martial arts video collection. Links for all this, Hiden and BAB's videos and Budo Japan are right under this video, so feel free to visit, contact us for any information or suggestions, and of course share. Budo no Kuni is of course Japan, and in these videos we aim to introduce you to some of the non-Japanese who live or have lived here for many years and have trained extensively in these koryu arts, these classic arts. My name is Grigoris Villaresis. I work with Hiden as a writer and part-time photographer, and I've been also training in these arts for the last 12 years, first in Greece, where I come from, and then here in Japan. In this fourth episode of Budo no Kuni, I'm deeply honored to have with me Phil Relnick, one of the most senior non-Japanese koryu teachers in the world. Phil started his lifelong, as it turned out, relationship with Japan in 1956 and its martial arts in 1957, and since then he has practiced judo, aikido, iaido, and a number of other arts, although he is better known because he is a teacher of two of the classic arts. He is a Shinto menkyo in Tenshinsho-den Katori Shinto-ryu and a menkyo kaiden in Shinto Muso-ryu. Phil lived in Japan for 40 years during a period of 50, and this makes his stint one of the longest among the martial artists who live here. And during that time he also met and trained with Donn Draeger, and that was for over 20 years, and he was also one of Draeger's closest friends. And as a matter of fact, it was because of his relationship with Draeger that he came here this time. Last few days there was a symposium about Donn Draeger. It was the life and legacy of Donn Draeger, and Phil was one of the guest speakers. We covered that event for Hiden and Budo Japan. So, of course, since he was here, we couldn't miss this opportunity to have him tell us a few things about his amazing journey in the martial arts and Japan's culture. So Phil, thank you very much for being here. And you know, I was saying before that I would love to hear you talk about Donn Draeger, but and actually the first time we sort of met, it was through Skype because I was doing some research about for an article about him. But I wanted to make this more about you. So we'll get to Donn Draeger, but let's start from your relationship with Budo in Japan, and that was before Draeger, right? You came to Japan before Draeger.
Yeah, right.
And you first came in 1956 as an airman.
As an airman, that's right, through the United States Air Force.
Right. So the occupation was over, and how was Japan at that during that time?
Well, economically, Japan was still recovering from the war. It was, I think, it was about zero GMP. I mean, there was very little growth. Many times I saw products made for use, daily use, anything from an ashtray to a coffee cup or whatever. And Japan was still struggling, and they didn't have the materials, the money, the knowledge to create what they have today, let's put it that way. I remember one time looking at an ashtray, I turned it upside down, and on the bottom of the ashtray was the leftover markings of an American beer company. So they took a beer can and changed it into a good-looking ashtray. Things like that sort.
Yeah, this is very Japanese, right?
Yes,
to
yes.
take things and try and make them better and use everything they have available.
That's right.
How were the people?
Well, for me, I've thought about this quite a bit. That's a very interesting question you asked me. I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
very hectic city, a lot of things going on. And I thought, growing up as a teenager, I thought I knew what's going on in the world.
Right.
I didn't know anything. I look back at my life and I think when I came here as a GI in 1956, I saw a country right after the war growing. The most wonderful people I've ever met from here. Everything I saw, the things that I witnessed during my first 3 years here, was everything positive. It was really positive, and I found out I didn't know much about the world at all. I didn't know. I had no idea. I knew there was a war. It was over. But I had some great experiences. For example, you would think that the Japanese would have bad feelings about Americans. I'm sure they were there.
Yeah, probably.
They covered them very well, but they were very, very friendly. Very friendly. For example, if I went to a movie, a Japanese movie theater, and I waited online to buy a ticket, somebody would come up to me and say, "Don't stand in line, go to the front of the line. You're the victor." And it was it was said very warmly and very friendly. Of course, I would never do it. I would stay in line.
And that was 11 years after the war, right?
11 years after the war. Or, for example, I was taking a bus from point A to point B, a regular city bus, a small miniature buses, very crowded. I'd stand in line. And people would say, "Don't stand in line, you go up front. You deserve to go in front." I was embarrassed quite a bit. But I was never feared for my life. I never had anyone speak rudely. And people could see that I was only 18 or so at the time. But they treated me friendly as another person. It's something I'll never forget in my life. In fact, through all the years that I've lived in this country, I call Japan my private Disneyland. And some Japanese say, "That's not nice." I said, "Well, you're misunderstanding me. What is Disneyland? It's a place where people are happy, kids go, they're happy, they do things, they're very exciting. That's what Japan is for me. Very safe, a very happy place for me, very friendly. I wouldn't trade my experience for the world. And it still continues every time I come here.
Yeah, and also it was a place where you got to do things that you liked, right? Like the martial arts.
And one thing I did was I started growing up here.
Right, because you were very young when you came.
When I was 18 years old, I'm sort of embarrassed about what the things are going on in my mind.
What you didn't know.
Right, and how much I didn't know. And I feel in many ways that I grew up as an adult the way an ordinary Japanese would grow up.
Yeah, because you were very young. So, and it was during that time that you started getting involved with the martial arts?
Yes, a friend of mine at work, when I was in the military, he said, "Hey, I saw something downtown, you gotta look at it. These little guys throwing these big guys around, and they don't seem to get hurt."
That's interesting.
I want to see that.
Yeah, sure.
I went down there. To get to that dojo, I had to wear boots, high boots, because the streets were, because of the weather, there were no paved streets then. This was in northern Japan, by the way.
Okay.
I had to walk through mud to get there.
Oh, you weren't stationed in Tokyo, right?
No, not at first.
At first you weren't stationed.
I was temporarily, but they moved me up north.
Okay.
Which I was very happy they did because it was quite nice up there.
Okay, so
anyhow,
you go to the dojo?
I went to the dojo and I said, "I don't know what happened to me, but that's for me."
And that was judo?
It was judo.
That was judo.
I went to the dojo and asked the teacher if I could. What is it? I said, "What is this?" First, I didn't even know the name judo.
Yes.
What is this? And is this judo? And the word Budo didn't exist in my mind. Martial arts, what's that?
What's that? Yeah.
Anyhow, I had to do it. So he said, go to a shop which is 15 to 20 minutes away, go to a shop and buy an outfit and come back. I went, I came back and I said, I'm here. And he looked at me and says, can I help you? He never thought I would come back. Yeah. So he wasn't even paying attention to me. I started that day.
I bought my uniform.
Right? And I started, and it was wonderful. I had more experiences. I could go on for hours and hours and hours just about that dojo.
That dojo, judo dojo.
Which I won't. I'll stop right here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because we have lots of stuff. So you stayed here. That first time you stayed here for 3 years.
3 years.
Right?
That's right.
And then you went back to the US.
I went to Europe.
You went to Europe. Still as an
one more year left.
Okay.
It was only 4 years.
And then you returned to Japan, right?
When I went to Europe, the first feeling I had was I missed Japan.
Okay.
And I liked Europe very much also. I liked it very much.
Where were you stationed in Europe?
In Germany.
In Germany.
And I got involved in judo in Germany. In fact, I was the first non-German to compete in their national judo championships. The first foreigner, because I'm half German. My father was German.
Okay, so you could.
That's a long story in itself.
Yeah, I guess.
So I'm on the books there.
Okay.
So I fell in love with it. And I just I wanted to do more judo. So I had no money, just like anyone else. When I got out of the military, I had to work, save my money. I talked to a couple people, and they said I should contact this guy, Donn Draeger.
This is where you first heard about Donn.
So I wrote to Donn in '59. Between '59 and '61, we corresponded, and it was kind of difficult to go to Japan in those days. As a tourist, I could, but that's only for 3 months, and I have to come back.
Right.
And I was thinking in long terms, like 1 year.
Yeah. Little did you know.
Little did I know. And anyhow, he found me a sponsor. You had to have a sponsor to come if you're going to stay other than a tourist visa, it's a student visa type thing. I needed a Japanese sponsor who would be responsible for me. He found one for me, and he got me connected with Kodokan.
So you could continue your judo.
Yeah. I went back to Japan in '61. And met him, and he was a very gracious man, very friendly. But I could tell the moment I met him that this guy was somebody special. He had that charisma,
Yeah.
and the confidence in what he was doing. He was 16 years older than me, I think, about 16 years older.
So,
but I felt
at that time you were
20, 21, whatever.
So he was in his late 30s.
Yeah, probably about like that. Wonderful man.
Anyway, we'll get back to him. But
Right.
so you're now back in Japan, and you start practicing at the.
So I
Kodokan?
came back to Japan with the idea of being here for 1 year.
Right.
That 1 year became 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It was 8 years now. I stayed.
Okay.
And during that time, I lived by teaching English.
Yeah, like most non-Japanese still do.
Right.
To this day.
And my last 4 years, I ended up being a full-time student at Waseda University. And it helped me learn Japanese and learn about the culture, living with Japanese on your own,
Right.
getting an education. It was a wonderful experience. Halfway through the university, I got married to a Japanese woman.
Japanese woman.
She was from Sofia. And I also did a year at Sofia in their international department when I didn't understand Japanese. So
So
I had many experiences during those 8 years.
during that period, you also practiced other things, other than
Yes,
judo, right?
I did aikido.
You did aikido,
and I
you did
trained with
iaido
Morihei
as well.
sensei.
And I wanted to ask about aikido because most modern day aikidoga would be green with envy if they heard that you actually practiced with the founder of the art, right?
Yes,
Morihei
when I say I
Ueshiba.
practiced with him,
Well,
it
tell us
was a lot
about him.
different.
Yeah.
I mean, he threw me a number of times. And,
Okay.
he was.
Because you were big and foreigner, and he had to throw you, right?
Yeah, and he was elderly at that time.
Yeah.
I learned quite a bit. I went there to do aikido. Every time I got injured, if I got injured in judo, I would go there because I learned about movements, body movements, which are not included in judo,
Right.
for safety reasons.
Right.
And I learned quite a bit. Really.
So how was Morihei Ueshiba? And
For me, he was someone you were afraid to talk to. But
Okay.
my wife also was training with me there, and she did some interpreting for him, and he spoke in the clouds all the time. I mean, he was very.
this is what we hear
Spiritual
about
and-
him,
yeah.
right? His spiritual stuff.
At that age, it was very difficult for me to.
to follow his.
Yeah, I couldn't get that close to him because my Japanese language wasn't very good.
Right.
But I had my wife there, but luckily.
And during that time, Terry Dobson was also here, right?
Oh yeah, Terry Dobson.
Yeah.
He and I became almost like brothers.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time together. He's a very friendly guy. Terry, good man, and that was his main art. So I learned a lot from him.
And during that time, also many of the then very famous instructors were still Uchideshi.
That's
there,
right.
Like,
I met them.
Yamada Sensei and Chiba Sensei and all these people. They were
Right.
still here, right?
Right,
During
and
that time.
that's right. And I met them, and then eventually they went back. They went to
Different
the
countries,
West,
yeah.
mostly to America. But you're right, different countries. Chiba
Yeah.
went to England.
To England, and Tamura went to
Yeah,
France.
France,
yeah.
that's right.
And, yeah.
And it was like seeing them in different countries was very a lot of fun.
So, how was the atmosphere at the Aikikai back then? I mean, with all these people there,
Well-
and with Morihei Ueshiba still alive and Tohei around there and all this.
Yeah, well, when I went, it was very good. It was very nice. It was the environment was very nice. But I noticed it started changing when they made an international Aikido federation. That's when there were problems. And I'm not an Aiki man at heart.
Yeah.
I learned the techniques. I think the environment changed, and not so good things happened. I think
Okay. Well,
more injuries.
yeah.
I was also, by the way, in Aikido, I was also a student of Tomiki Sensei.
Oh, you also practiced
Because
Tomiki.
Tomiki Sensei was a professor at Waseda,
Right,
and he saw me. I was in the judo team.
right, and he was
And-
also a judo.
Oh, he wasn't teaching. No, he was teaching Aikido. He was a professor in the physical education.
But he
department.
had a background in judo.
Oh, yeah,
already.
he's very, very, very high, and well known, respected.
Right.
And he used me with his Aikido students.
Right.
He'd make me fight 3 or 4 at one time when they had rubber knives. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. And he also did iaido as well.
Yes, I did EI probably from the early 60s, but at the beginning I never went to a dojo.
Oh.
My judo friends,
Uh-huh.
Japanese judo friends who were doing EI, excuse me, my Japanese judo friends were doing EI. It looked very nice. Can I do that?
Also do that.
Oh, I'll show you one. I learned one. Then a couple months later, I learned 2, until I learned all the omote of the EI for the particular school that they were doing. And So one day, one teacher, I went to an EI class, first time. Teacher said, you have no rank, you should get a rank. So he made me to go and well, I got ranked there.
Okay.
But iaido, as it was taught and still is taught, for me is not really what I like.
Okay.
I like more of a more active Katori Shinto-ryu.
Right, we'll be going to that, yeah. So during that time you start moving from the newer arts to the classic arts, right? And I'm guessing this happened because of Donn Draeger, right?
That's right.
So let's get to Donn Draeger.
Okay, so
We already said that he was your way of coming back to Japan, right? He helped.
Yeah, he helped me, and as soon as I came back, I was going to Kodokan almost every day.
So you
training in the same dojo. And he was my Dai senpai.
So you practice, you actually practice
of course,
with him.
we trained together, and he beat the heck out of me.
So how was, we usually talk about Draeger because he wrote the books and he created basically a field of study, like his hoplology, but we keep forgetting that he was a great martial artist, right?
Oh yes, he was.
And you had the chance to actually, fight with him and grab with him, right?
Oh yes. And
how was he? Was he as good as we
yes.
think?
And in fact, one reason why I'm talking to you today is because I learned so much from that man. I owe him so much in life that I want to make sure that what people know about him in the future is correct. And I hear people say, "Oh, he really wasn't that good at that." It wasn't. He was real. He was real, and my judo wasn't so bad, but he beat the heck out of me. He was a very good teacher and a very good leader.
Maybe the problem is that it's hard to believe that one man could have been so good in so many different things. You hear he was good in judo, he was good in aikido, he was good in koryu, he was good in pretty much everything. And maybe people have a hard time, realizing that some people are that good.
Well, that's a very good statement you just made now. And I've thought about that. There are some people who are blessed with a healthy body.
Yes, of course.
And an understanding of how the body works. We all have the same body, basically,
right.
But some of us really are not athletic at all, and they fall and they trip and they have all kinds of problems. He was a guy, he was very young, could have been about 8 years of age. He learned judo from a Japanese teacher when he was growing up. And that was probably, it opened the doors for him on what he could do with his body.
So he had a good awareness of his body right from the start.
And also he was a weightlifter, bodybuilder.
Right. You see pictures of him and he's like a professional bodybuilder, right?
Yeah, we're about the same size, and it ends there. And he had at least 20 pounds on me, more than 5 kilos, 6 kilos or so more than me, but it was solid muscle. Very, very healthy man, very supple body, and he wasn't like a very stiff
like bodybuilders usually
bodybuilder.
are.
He was very supple. He had excellent body, and he knew how to use his body. So, being able to do so many arts to me is natural, because aikido and judo are related.
Yeah, they're related, right?
All right, and weapons. Weapons, you can do just so many things with weapons, but they're related in a way too.
Right.
It's really not that hard. If a person's committed and he has desire to use his body like that, it's easy.
And if there's one thing that nowhere doubts is that he was committed, right? His whole life was the martial arts, right?
Yes, he is a product of first learning judo.
Right, when he started.
I was as a child.
As a child, yeah.
When he was in university, the war started. He went to the Marines. He joined the Marines.
Right.
He fought in China, in Korea.
So he was also a soldier. He was a warrior.
Yes, and he was. He used his body. He had to use his body.
Right.
And he was a product of the times.
Right.
And most people don't, for example, in America, well, I shouldn't say that now, but for a long period of time when I was growing up, there was a very long period of peace between the First and Second World War.
Right.
And he happened to be, at that time, at that age, to help the country
Right.
in war here. He turned into a kind of really, really unique person.
Right. And we can still feel the influence of what he did, right? And through you and through his books and through pretty much everything.
He was not only physically strong, but he was very well educated, had a good mind, and he had a very good use of his language.
Alessandro says that when he was coming to Japan for the first time, he talked with Terry Dobson. And Terry Dobson told him, when you get to Japan, go to meet Donn Draeger. And Ellis said, who is that? And he said, he's written some books. And Ellis, because he was young, said, well, I don't want to meet, people who write books. I want to meet actually a real Budoka. And Terry Dobson told him, go meet Donn. You'll be surprised at what he can do.
That's right. You said a very important thing there.
Yeah.
That's right. Donn would talk about, he used two words which he introduced me to, emek and etik.
Right.
Emek is a person who knows what he's doing through experience.
Through the inside, yeah.
Etik is a person who reads about it and teaches it.
Right.
Donn was emek. He knew what he was doing, he was fully trained. And he even told me, he said, don't read books, martial arts books about guys who are professors, who haven't done it. And I believe him. I still believe that.
So so at some point, because you were still practicing what we call the Gendai arts, right?
Oh,
the modern arts.
Yeah.
And at some point he got you to, or he introduced you to. How did that happen?
Okay, it's a small world. In those days, the really group of very committed foreign judoists was a handful of us. Right. At a very crowded time, there might have been 10. That's how, not many at all. So one day he came into the dojo and said, "Hey, any of you guys would like to learn how to use a stick?"
Yeah.
Yes.
That's me.
There is a term. There is a term which is called kingyo no fun. It is, kingyo is a goldfish. And the fun is the
excrement.
Excrement.
Yeah.
And when goldfish has to go, it comes out in a string. All that stuff, and it sticks.
Follow.
So when a goldfish swims around, it follows him.
Right.
And I was Draeger's kingyo no fun.
So
because when he did something,
you went over there.
He went there, I went there. He went there, I went there.
So you're basically moving around with him.
That's right. So when he said anyone want to learn how to use a stick, yeah.
He was already practicing.
Oh yeah, he was already practicing. In fact, he was. He probably was 5 years my senior in that, and he was very good.
Well, but 5 years is 5 years, especially for someone who is so dedicated like him. 5 years can be a long time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So you said, well, I want to also learn how to use a stick, right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
But we didn't quit judo either. We did both.
Right. And your dojo was the dojo of Takaji Shimizu, right?
Yes. Really, Shimizu Takaji sensei didn't have his own dojo. He was the head teacher for the riot police.
Riot police, right.
And he, that's my,
okay.
I should have shut that off.
Okay. Oh, it's okay, I thought it was.
Oh, shut that off, I'm sorry.
That's okay, you can cut this out. So, you were saying that Shimizu Sensei was the
head teacher for the riot police. And so when I started learning, he took us to Tomisaka police station, which was very close to Kodokan, and we trained there in the small dojo behind the police station.
And now we're talking, do you remember which year was that when you started practicing Jo?
Oh yeah, I started in Jo. Is March 1962.
62.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it continued, yeah.
Right. And at some point you were one of the you are one of the few non-Japanese who have reached the menkyo kaiden level, right?
Yeah, actually I was the first one.
You were the first one.
Yes. Don passed away when he was 60 years old.
Right.
He would have been the first.
Oh, he didn't get a menkyo
Not a
kaiden.
menkyo kaiden, he had menkyo.
Right. But he passed.
But he didn't get menkyo kaiden. And which is a shame because he was worth it.
And he was your senior and all that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you were the first non-Japanese who got the menkyo kaiden, right?
That's right.
And at some point you also started doing Katori Shinto-ryu, right?
Yeah,
You
so
started Katori Shinto-ryu.
that was, I told you, I started in 62.
You started Shinto Muso-ryu?
About 10 or 15 years later, I started. I watched Donn Draeger,
Right.
doing the demonstrations or whatever with his teacher, Otake sensei, and I want that too.
Right.
So I couldn't join at the same time he did, or shortly after, because I was going to school at Waseda. I got married.
Right. So you said.
I had to learn. I had to earn money. I was busy.
Right.
And the trains at the time were very slow because he's out in the country.
Right.
So I had to wait. I waited about 10 years until I really was ready for it. And then I started Katori Shinto-ryu. And at that time, Don was the first. There may have been one or two others who started and quit for whatever reason. And I was right behind him.
Right.
And I continued, and I still do it to this day also.
And you also got your teaching license in Katori
Yeah,
Shinto-ryu, right?
my teaching license is the menkyo, and it's called the Shido Sha Menkyo. Menkyo showed that I reached a certain level of training, and the Shido Sha license permits me to teach. If you don't have that license, you don't teach.
Okay. And studying one koryu is hard. Studying two is very hard. And how did you manage to balance your two arts and don't mix one with the other? You can see it happening, right?
Well, I think we have to think in terms of time and your physical stamina, mostly. You're not well, it depends on the person.
Yes, of course.
I was never overburdened by getting too much information. In fact, in those days, you had to draw it out of the teacher.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. How was it to be taught by those people at that time? It wasn't, because today it's easier, right?
Right, yeah, I think it's easier. In those days, whatever the teacher said to you, said, hi, and you did it.
Okay.
You didn't ask a question.
Right.
You didn't do that. You do it 1,000 times, and you'll figure it out yourself. That's the way they did then. And in many instances, that still continues. However,
it does.
However, the Japanese teachers are allowing students to ask questions now. It's happening. And I can see this because since I live in the States now, when I come and visit here, I see differences. And that's one of the differences I see, that people are more open.
But so I guess that one way to be able to balance more than one schools is to practice more, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And with more intensity.
My free time was taken up with my martial arts.
Right.
Between my wife, my work, my school, martial art, and eventually 3 children, I was busy from morning to night.
And so, at some point, you left Japan for good, or Well,
Yeah, well,
you keep returning to Japan,
yeah.
right? But you left in
98.
98,
in
right?
June 98.
98. And you moved to Washington State, Seattle?
Yeah, the state of Washington, outside of, in the suburbs of Seattle.
Of Seattle. And you have a dojo there,
Yes,
right?
I have.
And so you started teaching your arts over there, right?
Actually,
Or
I
not
had
to the
no
beginning?
intention
Oh,
to do that. I thought that one of my daughters is a ballerina. Well, she was a ballerina, dancer, and I thought that I'd make this studio for her, build it onto the house, and I'd use it with my wife, because my wife does the same things I do.
right. So you could practice with
And
your
I could use that. However, my daughter went off, and she became a ballerina in New York.
Okay.
So I had this room, and my teacher, Shimizu Takaji sensei, my Joe teacher, he passed away, and his oldest student became my new teacher, Nishioka Tsuneo sensei. And Nishioka sensei talked me into making that a dojo, a full-size dojo only, and that's what it did.
Yeah, because one of the, we say koryu, and it means a flow, right? So someone has to keep the flow going.
That's right, exactly. I was one of the spokes in the tire that goes around and
Right.
around.
And I'm guessing that Otake sensei also would like you
Yes.
to be a teacher as well, right?
Yes.
How were these people? We listen to these names, and they're sort of legendary today. I mean, Shimizu sensei and
Both
Nishioka sensei and Otake
wonderful
sensei.
men.
Yeah, how were they?
Um,
You said well, maybe they were a little
hard,
yeah.
Yeah, they had their styles. I must say that I've been blessed with having good teachers.
And you include Donn Draeger among
Oh, yes,
them, right?
I do.
But
Yes,
he
I
was
do.
also your teacher,
Yes.
right?
He wasn't my formal teacher,
Right.
but he was my teacher. He was my senpai. He was like an uncle to me.
Yeah, right. You said
Remember
before
I
that
said
he was
that
like an
before?
uncle, right?
Yeah, everything for me. He was someone who provided me with things I needed in life. Anyhow, getting back to those two teachers, Shimizu Takaji sensei, very quiet man from the countryside, from Kyushu,
Right.
always kept us with the basics. Very friendly. We didn't ask questions because it wasn't. I was young and learning,
Right.
watching my senpai. I did what they did. They didn't ask. I didn't ask.
Right.
Good technique, just what I needed. Otake sensei, Otake Ritsuke sensei, who is now retired, he's in his early 90s.
Right.
He is probably, with weapons, the best swordsman I've ever seen in my life. All Japan, if he's number one, number two is down 50.
Okay.
The space between the two is so different. He's so good. I learned a lot from him. But he talked more. He talked more and taught me a lot about the koryu culture. And he and Donn Draeger were very close.
Yeah.
Very, very close. And again, since I was Don's
Yeah.
of whom-
Speaking of whom?
Otake sensei took a liking to me and taught me quite a few things.
Yeah, when we were doing that story about Donn Draeger and we went to Narita to speak with him, I mean, he was speaking about Draeger for 2 or 3 hours straight. I mean, we had the machines recording him and he was talking and talking. I mean, you could tell that Donn Draeger was very important to him.
Yeah.
And it is important that you could tell that he respected him very much. It wasn't just, a student who was good, just good. It was something more than that.
That's right.
He spoke about him as if he was an equal.
Yeah. Don was older than him in age.
Really?
Yeah. Don was born in 22,
22.
and Otake sensei was born 25-ish.
Oh, okay. So yeah, but you could tell that there was a lot of respect.
Oh yes,
going
yes.
there. And, most people respect what I can say anyway.
Yeah.
So you returned to the US and
I retired when I
Yeah.
when I came back to when I went back to the States in '98. I retired, and my 3 children
had
they're
grown up.
old or grown up and they're doing their thing. My son lives in Japan. He may stay the rest of his life. I don't know. I mean, he's also Katori Shinto-ryu.
Okay. And so at some point you started teaching. You
Oh, yeah.
opened the
Oh, I'm
dojo?
sorry,
Yeah.
I had thought that maybe me and my wife and maybe 1 or 2 neighbors would get together.
Just practice yourself.
All these people found me. I have never advertised. The people found me. They found it at Relnick, came back to the States, we'll find them. And so we teach 5 days a week. And I'm at an age now where I can't do the things I would like to do, so I have a teacher in the wings waiting.
Okay.
For both schools. Both of them are very well qualified to take it after I'm gone.
This is something that I've also asked Elisandro, and I always ask people who are koryu teachers but not living in Japan that, you take this cultural phenomenon, which is the koryu, and you move it to a different place, a different culture. So I'm guessing that it must be very challenging. Okay, I haven't done it, but I'm guessing it must be very challenging. How do you deal with these challenges? What were the main challenges? And how do you deal with them?
First, if I took the Japanese martial art to the States and taught it the way I was taught, I don't think I'd be very successful. Because our cultures are different.
Yes,
Our learning styles are different. Pedagogy is different.
Right.
So what I've done is I've taken I take all of it, all of what I've learned, I teach the same way, in a way, but I blend it in with American culture. The American culture is just my approach, my pedagogy is different. Teaching is the same, the techniques are the same.
Of course. Yeah.
Our guys are as good as the guys here. However, I've tried to make a blend of the 2 cultures. The things you don't need, I leave out. For example, in Japan, in the old days, when the teacher said something, hi.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
It still is, yeah.
I tell the student, if you have a question, you ask me, why so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. So I blended that, I put the American way of being inquisitive into that style. My students, a number of them speak pretty good Japanese now. They're learning Japanese culture. They're good at chopsticks.
Yeah.
And other things. They're learning about the culture, which is very important.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture, continual mixture. And that blending changes all the time. Sometimes on certain subjects or what I'm teaching, I shift to being very Japanese. Sometimes when the students are new to whatever, I do a very American just to warm them up, to get them loosened up. But they all fit in that blend of both cultures.
And you have seen this system working.
It works.
Apparently, after 20
I believe
years,
it
right?
works. One very strong belief I have is that I have borrowed a Japanese culture. Shinto Muso-ryu is Japanese, it's not American.
Yeah, of course.
I've borrowed it, and I'm using it in America. Katori Shinto-ryu, I'm borrowing it, I'm teaching it in America. I respect those 2 cultures, I won't ever change them. It's difficult if you don't. I was trained completely in Japan,
Right.
so everything I know is Japanese,
Right.
and that. So it's not so difficult, but having a guy go to Japan for 6 months or a year or 2, even 5 years, is not enough.
No, it's not enough.
to go back and teach.
Right.
For me, round numbers, I'd say if you don't have 10 years, at least 10 years, don't open your mouth in a dojo.
Yeah. And actually, this is what many Japanese teachers say as well. When they see a non-Japanese going to the dojo, and they say, "How long will you be living in Japan?" If the people say, "Well, I'll be a student for 3-4 years," they say, "Well, maybe you should better go do kendo or something like that." Because they're not being snobbish. They say, "Well, if you start doing kendo here at the university, then you can go back to your home place and continue doing kendo. But if you do only 4 years of Itori or Katori Shinto-ryu, if you go back to your country, where are you going to?"
That's right, exactly.
You will need to stop. So why waste your time and why waste our time? I mean,
That's right.
do kendo. And you said something, I wanted to stay on that, because the other thing is that there's this balance between tradition and innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a huge issue, even in Japan, because time changes and because we practice these arts which come, centuries before us. And both your teachers, they were traditionalists, but they were also innovators, right?
That's very hard. It's
I
very
think
difficult to answer that. In some ways, I agree with you. In some ways, I don't.
Okay.
It seems to me that all of Japanese martial arts are gray. They're not 100% black and white.
Well, yes.
They're gray.
Yeah.
Gray means there's a flexibility and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So one teacher teaches this way.
Mm-hmm.
His son, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or his father, taught this way.
Right.
Who's right and who's wrong? So the word innovation, it may not, that may not be the correct word. Maybe it is the person's character,
Well, that very well be.
the person's skill.
Mm-hmm.
The two people, they both get promoted to menkyo kaiden,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not the same.
Yes, of course.
They bring their character with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a gray area. So the word innovation is not that they're innovating, that's the way they saw it. That's the way they interpreted it from their teacher. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It actually does.
Huh?
But, the problem with tradition is that for many people, tradition means, a museum piece, something that, you put in a glass case and you never touch because, by touching it, you will, you'll damage it. But the thing is that these arts, first of all, we now call them koryu, but at some point in time they weren't koryu, right?
What you're saying is very interesting. My second teacher in Jo,
Mm-hmm.
Nishioka Tsuneo Sensei,
Mm-hmm.
said, koryu are not museum pieces.
Right.
They're living.
They're living, yeah. They need to be living.
They are living arts. And so if they're living, each person who's involved in it is a little different from each other. So their differences showing.
Mm-hmm.
Some teachers are very good.
Yeah.
They may have the same rank and distinction as the other, but some are very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Yeah,
very poor. I won't say bad.
Yeah, but
Very
you see
poor
that,
teachers.
yeah, I mean, let's be
Huh?
honest. Yeah, you can see that.
So that gray area, that's very important to understand about the martial arts.
Yeah, well, there is that. And now, because we're talking about koryu and because this, the magazine and these videos are mostly about koryu, many people who don't practice these arts keep asking, why train in these things? I mean, are they still relevant? Or you're just doing, what the Society for Creative Anachronism does. You just dress, especially if your art is wearing, I don't know, armor and all that, you just, dress up and, string sticks. Are these arts relevant?
In certain way, abstract ways, yes, I think they're very relevant. For example, if anything, the martial arts have taught me to be aware. Zanshin.
Right.
They taught me to be aware of where I am, what I'm doing, to make me alert. So it's not, people may think that's not very important, but it is important. It's relevant. It taught me how to protect myself. If I was attacked for some reason, and I'll go back to that in a second. If I'm attacked, that pen you've got in your hand, that's a weapon.
Yeah, of course.
That's a weapon. But a guy on the street who may be big and strong, he may lose because he doesn't know how to protect himself. It's something else. Is to be alert. You might be attacked. What am I doing in that area?
Right.
You're taught in martial arts, it becomes part of you not to go in a place like that.
What will make you, put you in danger, right?
Right. Or how to react to a certain situation.
Right.
And you can escape violence because of your knowledge of how to cope with the situation.
Right.
There is relevance.
So it's not about just waving a sword
Right,
around. I mean,
right,
you probably won't be waving a sword
Right.
around.
You know, one time I was on a train on a Sunday morning. The train was empty.
Here in Japan?
In Japan. A mother and a little boy about 2 years old. He could walk. And he loved to get on a train. This things moving and he would look out the window and run up and down. And I remember one day I read the newspaper and I folded it up, and finished reading it, rolled it up maybe, I don't know what. And this kid was running up and down. All of a sudden the train lurched and the kid went flying. I put my newspaper out,
Yeah.
and caught the boy on my newspaper.
Right.
Yeah? You don't have to be big and strong.
Right.
The alertness, the awareness, boom.
Yeah. And of course, this happens because of your training, right? It wouldn't have happened otherwise, probably.
I could see it coming. And the boy was shocked and looked at me as a funny faced foreigner here. And I was kind of shocked that the paper didn't fold. The paper stopped him. And the mother came running to the kid and thanked me, and anyhow, there's relevance. It expresses itself in different ways.
Yeah, I think that people who ask that, they think of these arts as in a very superficial way. I mean, they expect that you move around like the Highlander with a sword at your chest. But it's probably not about that. I mean. Anyway, because now you have 60 years in the martial arts, right? You have
60.
Over 60 years, yeah.
Over 60. 65 years. I don't know.
65, yeah, something like that. You have seen these arts go through different phases, right? So, there was a time that no one knew about them, and then, with the cinema and with the internet, that people know about them, and then start thinking differently about them. Would you care to make a prediction about their future? I mean, how do you see the martial arts going?
One thing I would like to say, a lot of people do martial arts. There are a lot of people who are doing martial arts shouldn't be doing martial arts. And let me clarify that a bit. A lot of people are doing koryu, the traditional martial arts. Right. They shouldn't be. They don't belong there. They should stick with the modern martial arts, which are quasi-sports. Right. If you have a Dan rank, a Q or a Dan belt rank, and if your school has competition, that's sports. Right. A quasi-sports, let's say. Right. Kendo, judo, aikido, karate.
Yeah, karate, yes.
So, I think that the door shouldn't be open to anyone who wants to do koryu. I think the desire, some people have a desire for it, but they don't belong into it. a lot of people, I call them weekend warriors.
Right. Yeah.
They do it for pastime. They're not doing martial arts. They have it's a hobby with them, and they're playing around with movements, that's all. So, I think that the martial arts, the modern and the traditional, are spread around the world, all around
nowadays
the world.
they are.
And that is hurting the martial arts. There is a saying, gyaku yunyu, reverse import. And that is that eventually, I believe, eventually, sometime in the future, the Japanese teachers are going to go overseas to see what it looked like in the old days.
Yeah, maybe.
Huh?
Maybe.
They're going to have to borrow technique. I know for a fact there are stories where well-known Japanese teachers who we were drinking buddies when they were still growing up, they went overseas and saw techniques that had been lost in their koryu schools that were taught before the war, but they no longer exist in Japan.
And they were preserved by non-Japanese who were here at the time.
Guys like us who are interested, we hold on to it.
Right.
So, who's to say which way it's going to go in the
of course
future?
you don't, yeah.
However, I think the Japanese should be more interested in what's going on with their schools in foreign countries. Some Japanese have the attitude of, well, as long as you don't bring it back into Japan, it's okay. That's wrong. The Japanese masters are very good. They're masters for a certain reason. They're master teachers for a certain reason. And they're responsible for the growth and the health of those schools. And that's not being done. Or it's not being done enough.
Yeah. Yeah, this sort of segues to my next question, which was, you practice judo, and judo at some point became an Olympic sport, and then, karate is now becoming an Olympic sport, in a couple of, next year actually, and you practiced a koryu, and at some point this koryu became big, right? So we see that there is a kind of popularity, and I'm always a kind of big popularity, and I'm always wondering if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Well, nothing is only a good thing or a bad thing, right? But I'm thinking, especially for koryu, how good is for a koryu to have hundreds of members all over the world. I mean, I learned koryu in the way that a dojo of 15 people is big.
That's right. Right. It's something Donn Draeger always said. It's not the quantity, it's the quality.
It's the quality, right? Yeah.
And you're absolutely right with that statement. We don't need so many people.
Yeah.
Small, high quality. A small number of people, high quality is what you want. And as I said before, not everyone should be doing it.
Yeah.
They'll ruin it. They will ruin it.
I also did a few years of judo back in Greece, and the way judo is organized in Greece is pretty much the way it's organized all over the world. Basically, everything is Ishii, is a match. Randori doesn't make much, it's not very different from Shiai, and you only learn the kata a few days before you go to test. And this probably owes to judo becoming an Olympic sport. And even though we know that Jigoro Kano was a supporter of the Olympic idea, I'm with many judoka who think that judo shouldn't have been an Olympic sport. Maybe it did it more bad than good.
Could be. But you're right now. I see judo. I love judo, by the way. I don't do it anymore, of course, because of my age. I love it, but
you did for decades, right? You did for many years.
Yes,
judo,
many years. But I see it. That was a sport, not a martial art.
Yeah. So.
And a lot of these things we're going to turn into sports. It's disappointing for me.
Yeah, if you see, well, from one way of seeing it, yeah. And I was thinking the same about karate, because we already talk about sports karate, and it's not a recent phenomenon. Sports karate has been around for years, right? So who knows how sports karate will change karate, right?
Right.
Well, anyway, so I was thinking that 60, how many? 60. Well, you first came to Japan in '56, so it's 63 years ago, right? 60.
Whatever. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Math is not so good.
Yeah, right. So 63 years ago, you took a trip which basically never ended, right?
That's right.
You're
That's
still
right.
in Japan, and you'll probably be coming to Japan again. So what I was we were talking about over email is that if this trip, was a book, what would be the main points of this book? If we wanted to review this book, I mean, what would be the main points of this trip in Japan? This never-ending trip.
Wow, that's hard. I'm writing a book.
You are writing a book.
I've been writing it
really
for many
love.
years.
Yeah.
I've been writing it for many years.
I would really love to read this book. I mean,
Hopefully I'll get it done before it's too late.
Okay.
But the point is, I'm in the middle of that book. Not middle. I'm here. I've got to put it together.
because it's
So
your
to
whole
answer
life,
your,
right?
yes, it's alive and it's moving around. I can't answer your question so clearly, but the point is, I'm working on it. Judo has given me, or not judo,
Budo,
martial arts
Martial arts Budo, yeah.
has, first of all, I was blessed with good teachers,
Right.
all right? With that as its base, and me having a healthy body for many years,
Right.
and the commitment to do it, that has filled my life with pleasure. It was also, it's an uphill battle,
Of course.
but it was challenging. We need that in our lives. We really need it. Everyone is they're like this all day long. In front of this thing.
Yeah.
You don't need this. This is, all my brains are in here, and I put it away. I put it, if you know what, I put it over there. I don't care about it. My phone numbers and stuff. But I'm being challenged by martial arts. It's made me healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's made me alert.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've picked up some leadership qualities in my life,
Mm-hmm.
which I'd like to pass to others.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to live my life again, I wouldn't change it. I would clean up,
If
I would
you
clean
buy
it up.
for it, yeah.
but I would never change it. I think people, well, what do you waste your time doing that for? Well, what do? Just sit sit on the couch and
Watching TV.
and watch
all day,
TV?
Yeah, not really.
No, and I feel good and really satisfied with life. It's challenging, and I'll continue until the end.
And also, it kept you in touch with a different culture and opened your
Oh,
eyes
yeah,
to the whole world, right? And
Yeah.
So,
I've been to 64 countries. Your country as well.
that's quite a few, actually.
Yeah, it's quite a few, really.
So, with this, let's wrap this up. This fourth episode of Budo no Kuni. Phil, really thank you very much for being here with us today. And of course, I would like to thank all of you for watching Budo no Kuni, the land of martial arts. Be sure to check under this video for links to BAB's videos and Hiden magazine and budojapan.com. And if you like what you saw, tell the world. If you didn't, tell us, and we'll try to do better next time. Thank you for now. Bye. いいですか?
はい、ありがとうございます。
I really thank you, Phil. I really thank you. It's been really a
It took me a
pleasure.
little time to warm up. I'm sorry about that.